All right. Welcome to another episode of the Joe and Doug Show. We are going to chat with you for a few moments today on some lessons we had from our childhood. All of us have those experiences, those lines that we remember from our parents. We have the ones that we don't like, because I said so. We all kind of say that. And from time to time, you use it as a parent. One of my dad's favorite was, "This is not a democracy. You don't get a vote. This is what we're going to do." But there are those moments with coaches, teachers, parents, those lessons that you kind of carry with you for the rest of your life. And some of them come out of really good experiences. You're like, "Oh, I'm so glad I did that." Others of them come from places like, I never want to experience that again, but I really learned something valuable. So childhood, sum up your childhood in 30 seconds. Is it fun, good, chaotic?
We're going to really rip the scabs off here today, aren't we? so I feel like I was, mud, and my childhood really forged me. Mm-hmm. And it was not a pleasant thing by any means. And I think the pressures made me better in certain ways, but I got to experience right to the brink of being broken kind of a thing. So I didn't get this nice systematic way of learning. I got trial by fire after trial by fire, and most of it was really practical life lessons where I got to make a mistake and then I got to just deal with the entire mistake on my own and feel the pain. And so I when you do enough of those, you either going to get scared and shy away from everything or get really good at experiencing pain. And I was the latter of the two.
So give us a feel for household upbringing. So you had some siblings, mom, dad. Did you play sports, not play sports, active family, passive family? What was kind of the journey?
Yeah, sports were a big thing from the time we were all 4 years old. Yeah. We were hitting the baseball diamond and playing football in backyards. It was always a thing. I had 3 siblings, and my parents were together, but then when right into the teenage years, they split. Okay. And so I assumed the role of mini dad, where watching the younger.
Where do you fall in the sibling?
I'm second to oldest, right? So I had a younger brother and sister. And so it's my job to, come home from school and watch my friends out there playing in the baseball diamond, and I'm washing dishes going, "You gotta move." Yeah.
No, that's good. Well, I have 2 younger brothers. We were raised in a decent home. There were things that were chaotic. Now I know certain things that I, didn't know as a kid. But I think we had bumps and bruises like any family. Went through a bankruptcy and a foreclosure. Now, at the time, all I knew was I had to go to a different school and we had to move houses. I didn't realize all what was going on, and people from church were showing up more with food. I mean, that was the extent of kind of my recollection of it. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's what was happening in those, kind of moments.
Now, when you were going through that, because we did the same thing, was it scary, or did they insulate you from the fear part of it?
Honestly, at the time, I just remember we got to see a bunch of people at the house, and I remember us having to move.
Nothing really changed.
I changed some friends, but within 2 years, I was in the same school with everybody again because the schools combined. So we just moved from one side of town to the other side of town. So it's the extent of, in Boardman going from West Boulevard to Stadium Drive elementary schools. And so I was in second grade, so it wasn't terrible necessarily. It was probably actually an advantage for me a few years later when I went to middle school in 5th grade, because I knew people from both schools. And so I had a much broader kind of friend base once I got to middle school than most kids who had just gone to one elementary school. But as far as the inner workings of that, I had no idea any of that stuff happened until I was in college or later. Just wasn't talked about. So, but both of my brothers, we all played sports too. Baseball, soccer, believe it or not. I know some of you look at my physique and you're like, why did you play soccer? I eventually tried football for a year, but baseball was actually my sport. What was your sport? What did you play?
Baseball starting out, and I played that all the way through high school.
Okay, me too.
I dabbled in wrestling, anything that I like the calisthenics and really working myself up. So anything that gave me good health benefits, I loved doing.
Okay. So as a kid, you thought about the health benefits of sports?
I did.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, I loved being able to run fast. So my thing was I was an outfielder, and I needed to be the fastest person on the team. I wasn't the strongest. I was I was a little guy, so I had to be able to outmaneuver all of the big giants that would squash me.
Okay.
There you go.
I usually did the squashing.
Right.
So
we would have gone along famously.
Yeah, no, I was always bigger, stronger, faster. And so I remember getting to high school and well, faster is in, I'll put that in quotation marks. I was never very fast, but I was just always a little bit taller, a little bit whatever than most of the other kids. So I appeared faster, but I was never fast. And then once I got to high school, it was like everybody caught up size-wise, and I'm like, wow, I got to work at some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And baseball ended up being kind of my niche. I pitched, and it was fun. It was a good time. In childhood, you talked about mistakes. That is the prime time to make mistakes.
Yes, it
is in childhood. Walk us through one or two of those that were really shaping or transformative for you.
So I was a troublemaker, and I know that surprises you like crazy, but
Yeah.
I was always getting my hands into stuff that I shouldn't have getting my hands on.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, like, you were just okay. So one example is that we had a bunch of neighborhood kids that would always try to get you to do stupid things, right? And you as a kid would just blindly go do it, and they would mess with you because they'd make you to do really bad stuff. One time in a far field, there was some lady had a burn pile, and somebody made the suggestion that something would happen. I don't remember if we lit the burn pile, right? They wanted to see if little Joe would go light the burn pile. And so I lit the burn pile, and it burned down a whole field of large trees that and fell over into yards. Like I was crazy in trouble. The fire department was there. I was grounded.
That's not a little bit of trouble. That's a lot of bit of trouble.
But that's the kind of stuff I would do pretty regularly. Second thing, we decided to take somebody's parents' gun, right? And just play with it. Just go out into the field and play with a handgun. And I got left with it. I didn't know what to do. There was no bullets in it. It was just a gun. So I took the gun and I hid it in my snow boot, right? And when my mom came around and found that I had a handgun in my and I was deliriously just, whatever. So it wasn't ill intent, but just think what my mom was thinking when I'm burning down forests and
yeah, today you would be flagged at school. You would be school shooter material. I mean, burning down forests and you had a handgun.
Yeah.
Wow. No, we were all pretty good kids. That's always my thing that I will share with people. I think the worst thing I got in school was like a lunch detention one time. Was a pretty good kid, decent student. Didn't get in a ton of trouble. Had a good reputation. So even when I did things that were borderline, I always got the benefit of the doubt because I had the reputation of being a good kid.
Exactly opposite of you. If anything happened, it was always me until proven otherwise.
I can remember in 6th grade. At lunch, there was a young lady who I was interested in, and one of the activities during recess, it was 6th grade, was like the last year you got like recess time after lunch, was playing suey on the wall. Throw the tennis ball against the wall, and then you peg somebody, right? And we had like modified rules. You weren't allowed to like directly peg somebody. You had to throw it and beat them to the wall with the ball or whatever. Well, I was playing nicely, me and this young lady, and another guy came up, and he threw the ball on the roof very intentionally, and I shoved him. And the lunch aide was standing right there, Mrs. Vining. I can still remember her. She was super sweet and watched me. And I shoved this dude pretty hard and was like, leave us alone or whatever. And I was like, can't believe you threw the ball up on the roof. And I was like in his face a little bit and pushed him. And she's standing right there. And now this kid was in trouble all the time. And she looked at it, and he was like, "Oh, you're gonna get suspended for fighting now. You pushed me," and like knew that like I'd never been in trouble, and like I'm sweating on the inside, but I'm just like kind of holding firm because like I'm interested, right? And Mrs. Vining standing there, and he goes, "Did you see that? He pushed me on the ground." And she just looked at me. She goes, "I didn't see nothing." And but that was I got the benefit of the doubt more often than not because of that reputation of being quote unquote a good kid. I had one or two things with on that athletic field, testosterone would fly, and sometimes you get into like a little thing, but that was. Coaches had a way of dealing and handling those sort of things.
Here's another one this is just me being evil. This was me. No one put me up to this. Nobody was messing with me.
You conjured this up.
This was me. So my mom was doing tulips, and she had all these tulip bulbs laid out. And I convinced a group of friends, probably 5 or 6 of us, that these things weren't tulip bulbs, that they were onions. And they were onions, and let's eat them, right? Oh. And so I have 5 kids, and I don't even know why someone would eat just a raw onion anyhow, but still, we go mowing on these onions, and they're very toxic. And so when when our parents found out, they fed us syrup of Ipecac, and you have all these kids outside puking in the bushes, just feeding us this grape Ipecac over and over again, and everybody's just expunging their stomach. That was all me, though.
Did you eat it too?
I did too.
Oh, well, at least
how stupid am I that
at least
I went
you participated. I don't know, but
how stupid.
It's not like you just threw them out there for no reason. You participated.
I derailed you. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. So in childhood, who were the people that you kind of looked at as influential? Maybe there was a coach or a teacher, or maybe conversation you had with mom and dad, something that really, maybe some defining words that were spoken to you, or an experience you had that kind of shifted your trajectory a little bit.
I had a pastor one time that I grew up in the church, and I was always the spectacle, the person in the spotlight, always cracking jokes, always causing trouble there too. And usually the older people in the congregation did not like me at all because I was always causing problems. But there was this one pastor. He was kind of like hip and young, and he gravitated and used me, like, in that spunk and that spirit and tried to guide and direct rather than quash. And I had an appreciation for someone who could see through the little bit of
the facade on the outside. Yeah, that's cool. I think for me, I would think of some coaches that I really enjoyed playing for. I think of a few teachers I had that made particular investments in me. I would say a defining kind of shift. Like, I think of stuff my dad said or my mom said or my granddad or my pop-pop, like those kind of things. But when I was in college, I had just kind of set out on, hey, I'm going to go into ministry. I started youth pastoring at the end of my freshman year of college. So I was preaching every week, and I was kind of honing the craft. Well, most everybody was in school, and if they preached twice in a semester, that was a lot. I was doing it once or twice a week. While I was doing it. And so my sophomore year, I took my homiletics or my preaching class, and we had a new professor that came in, and he had been the chaplain at the military academy for almost 20 years. And so his job was to preach to the cadets at the military academy for a long time. Really great, great preacher, African-American guy, had a real just kind of verbose style, and I really took to him. And so I took my preaching class with him, and I came in, and the first sermon I did, I got up there, I had to preach for 5 minutes, and I was preaching for 20 to 30 minutes twice a week. And so I got up there, and I didn't look at a note. I preached this zinger message. I condensed down. It was good. Everybody's like, wow, he's so good. And I got all these rave reviews from my classmates. And the next day, I was going to eat breakfast, and chaplain, his name was Chaplain Cruel. Which is totally awesome for a name. But I remember he was sitting there at breakfast, and I walked in with my tray in the cafeteria, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Reed, come on over here." And I was like, oh, "Okay." And I sat down, and I was like, I was going to go sit with my friends, but he said, "Let me tell you something." He goes, "Listen, you're hands down the best communicator we have in the class." And he goes, "And you could get an A in this class standing on your head. You probably don't even have to try. You didn't have to try all that hard. I'm sure you took that from a message you had preached or whatever." And he read through a little bit, and he said, "But I'll make a deal with you. We can get together every other week or something, have lunch, have breakfast, and you bring me your sermons you're preaching at church, and you come to class, and I'll grade you harder than I grade everybody else. And you won't get an A in this class, but when you leave here, you'll be a bona fide preacher." And I said, "I'm in." I ended up getting a B+ in the class, which wasn't the best grade. But man, he nitpicked everything that I did, and I became a better communicator because of it. And so investments like that. And I had other coaches and people in high school and stuff that did similar things. Do you have anybody in your life that was like, "Hey, Joe, let me invest in you in this space," or a coach or a teacher?
Unfortunately, I had to fight for every inch through everyone. I think, there's some people who invested a little bit of advisement, but that's the extent of it, where business advice or mentoring or something like that. But as far as like a true buy-in, never, not once.
Yeah, no, those are so special, and I've been fortunate to have several of those. And it's part of the reason why I think even now I value those mentor relationships, and I know we've talked about that before. If you were looking at your childhood, what would you say are maybe a phrase or a lesson or something that stands out to you that, like, if you were theming it, or, hey, I learned this. Like my dad's big one that he would say is "can't means won't." We actually have a list of rules in our house, and I added that to that because my dad would say it all the time. Not necessarily because he believed it, but he knew it was good for me. And I learned that as I got older. But the whole idea that it's not because you don't have the ability to, it's because you're not willing to. You're either not willing to put the work in that it'll take to get there, or And so I say that to the kids pretty regularly because I think it is a really important thing. Like, when you say I can't do something, you're saying you're not willing to do something. So just at least say it correctly. I'm not willing to go. That's fine. You may not be willing to put 8 months of work in to get to that spot, but it's not that you can't do it. And so I think for me, that was one of those big ones that sticks in my head, and I've tried to pass down and repeat to my kids. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, well, mine aren't as noble as yours. I'm sure you're shocked about that. But so when we were going through that stretch where everybody was poor and it was really tough to do anything, our lifestyle, the philosophies that I was bringing in didn't make any sense. I knew that we were in a bad spot, but the philosophies seemed like they were making things worse. Okay, so for instance, like I got super opposed to coupons because we couldn't buy anything unless there was a coupon. To this day, I won't buy anything with a coupon. You could have a coupon and I will tear it up because I'm going to get it if I need it, and it's not going to be gatekeepered by a coupon.
Okay.
So I just, anyway.
No. Those things, we were on food stamps for a little bit, and I can remember my mom with the booklet and then coupons and everything else. She'd have her little zippered pouch, and before we went to the grocery store, we'd sit down and she'd have to pull out the coupons and then the actual stamps that you'd take to the store. Again, I was 7, 8. I didn't realize what those things were at the time. But even now, we tried doing the couponing thing. Remember when that was cool for 30 days? It was on TV for a little bit. But they had that the coupon moms that would show up and they would pay them to take groceries, and you're like, man, that's really cool. We tried to do that for a week, and we're like, that's entirely too much work.
Yes.
That's a full-time job to get free groceries.
Yeah, I'm like, Mom, I need a notebook. And she'll go through and say, we don't have a coupon for your notebook, but here's a pencil. I don't need a pencil.
Oh, it's good.
Like my impression of my mom, that sounded
No, that was good. You should do impressions. I think there's a comedy show coming up, isn't there?
Yes,
Yeah, right
nice.
behind you. How about for you passing down stuff? Obviously, I mentioned with my dad, there were some things that he taught me that I'm like, I don't really want to pass that down. And then there are other things that I was like, wow, that was really good. And I want to make sure that I reproduce that in my kids. Are there anything from your childhood that you're kind of like, you know what, I want to help my son learn these things. I want to make sure I'm passing these things down. Maybe a lesson from your childhood that you're like, hey, I have to make sure that he gets this before he leaves.
And what you said and your dad, the whole can't thing, that's a big thing. I don't even let the words be used around me. I will call it out if I hear it, you can't do it? Really? Explain to me how you can't do it.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a big one for kids.
Yeah.
My wife used to say, as a kid growing up, she would say, I can't want to. which is, I mean, you could picture, at 3, 4 kids saying that and it being cute.
Right.
But if that turns into a lifestyle later, you're going to run into obstacles in life. And if you haven't yet, just wait 30 seconds. It's coming. And so if we don't have the mentality to fight through some of those things and everything's, well, I can't do this, I'll just change that. And we morph a whole life around it. You'll never live a life really satisfying or worth, kind of emulating. I think for me, I would look at the things I learned on the athletic field. I've been really with my kids, I know there's that tension, right? Because sports can become all-consuming, and you see that with a lot of parents. And it's like, look, little Joey, he's not going to play in the NFL or the NBA. You're spending thousands of dollars for certain things, and I'm all for fanning the flames of their passions, but I also want to live in that tension of, hey, there's other things that are going to be far more valuable. Because after he graduates high school, as much as I enjoyed playing baseball, I had the realistic expectation that
you weren't going to do that.
I probably was not going to play in college. We watched The Last Dance. I don't know if you've watched it. Were you a Michael Jordan fan?
Not really.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No.
So The Last Dance is 10 episodes behind the scenes of the 98 Bulls when they won their 6th title. Awesome. I was a huge Jordan fan, had the jersey, the sneaks, the whole deal. And, in 98 when they won, so it goes 10 episodes in this whole thing. And Jordan kind of comes to the end of his career, and, they wanted to go for a 7th. And it kind of navigates through that whole kind of journey for him, but the lessons that he learned from his parents and the other players just were so powerful. But I said to my wife while we're sitting there watching it, I said, when I was a kid, if you would have asked me, I wanted to play in the NBA, I wanted to play with Michael Jordan, that was I love that. To this day, probably my favorite recreational sport is to go out and shoot some hoops and play basketball. I'm not saying I'm any good at it, but I was okay. As a kid, I enjoyed playing in, PAL basketball and stuff like that. But I came to the realization that I'm 5'10" and fat. Like, I was not going to play in the NBA. Like, even if I put insane amounts of work into it, the statistical probability of me making it there. Now, maybe the NFL, there would probably be higher probability in certain things because my body type is more geared towards that if we're doing a real data analysis of who I was and strengths and weaknesses. But I think with kids, like, I want to fan those passions, but I also want to help them build things for the future. And I think my parents, my coaches, they all did a great job of helping me. Hey, we're going to go all in on this, but we want to make sure you're not just becoming a good athlete, but you're becoming a good young man. You're not just becoming, a decent high school baseball player, but you're learning things for life. And I love the camaraderie, and you learn to lose, and you learn to deal with your emotions. You learn to overcome. There's so much that is good on the athletic fields and courts and stuff like that. I'm a big proponent. I love watching. I got to coach my boys in soccer, and I love watching them, learn how to deal with defeat. I love that they're passionate and they want to win everything, and they're keeping track of goals, whether the coaches are or aren't, especially at their age. And I love seeing that passion. What are some lessons you learned from being on the baseball diamond or elsewhere? What are some lessons kind of maybe even now that apply to you that you learned from sports?
Well, I think that motivation that you talked about is a little bit better than mine. I was a stubborn guy, so if you told me I couldn't do something, you better believe that I was going to do it. So if you said, if you can't go to Mars, guess what I'd be next week? Getting on a ship, shooting to Mars. Even if I couldn't, I'm going to.
Yeah.
So, but, as kids, I agree with you that they're, the way of keeping those passions flamed up. Sports did a good job of it because it was so slowly progressive. Mm-hmm. I'm compulsive and impulsive, right? And so I don't have the patience for things to just I want to go, today I'm going to be on the field and tomorrow I'm going to be in the World Series, right? And that's it. There's no in between with me. I'm rocket shipping. And so my thing was a little bit different where it taught me a little bit of patience because I had no other choice. They weren't going to put me in, pony league, in fifth grade. And so I had to figure out how to be patient and go along with the rest of my peers.
Interesting. So patience, you would say, is a big
sure.
one. I think, if I'm looking at it, I think the work ethic that coaches and teammates, pushed you to have, in the off season to do certain things. And it was a struggle because, when you're little, I'm just going out and running around with my friends and this is fun. And then when I started to play travel sports and I started to get on more competitive teams, there were higher expectations, and it helped me to learn to manage, expectations, also time. I do have to set aside time to, if I'm going to play soccer, I got to be able to run this and so fast. So if I don't start running now, I'm really going to hate myself come August when they're making everybody else run, or whatever. With football, it was lifting weights. With baseball, I did certain camps and stuff to improve my mechanics and stuff for pitching. But it taught you a work ethic, and I would agree that delayed satisfaction because you weren't going to win the championship in the preseason. You had to wait till the end of the season, and you had to work your tail off.
You weren't even playing the game. You were working on your arm strength, and you want to be running the diamond, and you got to slow that stuff down.
Well, and baseball is a very methodical and slow sport anyway. So, yeah. How about wrestling? So I think there's a different dynamic between team sports and individual sports. Yes. So, my dad played tennis in college, which was really, he told me about it, and I saw, pictures when I was a kid of him playing tennis, me in a stroller, little. But it wasn't until he passed that his coach in his 80s showed up at the funeral. And my dad was the captain of the tennis team, and he was one of the first people I coached. And then two of his teammates showed up. I'd heard stories, but you know how much is fable and how much is accurate. And then these guys show up and vouch for he was a good tennis player, and I was like, whoa. And it is what it is. But there's always a difference, I think, in individual sports. So I played a lot of I'll call it ping pong, and my dad will turn over in his grave. But a lot of table tennis in college and high school and stuff. But it was all for fun in people's basements. But there's no one to blame but you. So what's the difference maybe between wrestling and baseball, since you played both those ones?
Well, bringing it up, guess what weight class I wrestled at? Take a guess.
What are you, like 112?
103.
Oh, yeah.
103.
Strong wind would blow you over.
Yeah. And what I didn't understand going in, and I totally understand it when I'm adult, is that when they would pair you up in wrestling, like the next guy up, they would pair you up with like a 200-pounder, and you'd go through your motions with a guy who weighs so much more than you. So then when you're actually wrestling someone in your weight class, it's like the donut on the baseball bat. You're so used to trying to throw this guy who's twice your size around that guy's a little easier to throw around.
So on an individual level, you're able to kind of hone on those things. And I guess baseball has an individual kind of element to it. When I was pitching, it was me, the batter, and the catcher.
But you have other people to kind of like where your weaknesses are. They got to have strengths, and they can balance the team. When it's you, your weaknesses are matched up identical with someone's strengths.
So did you find it easier to develop in those things because they were individual? And
By speed, because if you didn't fix it now, you're done. Like you couldn't own up to it. Like in baseball, you can develop your skills over time and have your team bail you out, and then you get good along with the team. And in this kind of stuff, you're either good or you're not, and it's not any other way.
So which do you think is more accurate for life later? Individual sports, team sports, or both?
Yeah. Well, in my experience, I mean, pursuing leadership, and it's a single-person sport. It really is. There's very few people that could understand what it is that you do at the same time that would ever get in the same boat as you ever in a million years.
So it's I would say it's both and. So so much of what I do is team development, and obviously we have some people that are really strong in some of the things they do, and other people that are really weak and are growing in certain things, and so you try and position them correctly so that they get to emphasize their strengths without exploiting their weaknesses. But I think as a leader, Maxwell has this principle called the level of the lid, that I'm the lid on the organization. No one can outgrow the CEO. And so I would probably say the same thing's true here. And so from an individual standpoint, I have to be reading, I have to be investing in myself, I have to be growing on a personal level. Otherwise, people will start hitting that lid and getting kind of frustrated because they're growing themselves, and they're going, well, why am I following this person? Because I'm I'm outpacing this, and that gets frustrating. How do you develop yourself now? As a kid, some of that's formed for you, right? Mom and dad form it for you. Coaches, teachers, people give you kind of, hey, this is the parameters you work in. But once you become an adult, you run your own company. You can take off when you want to take off. You can work 4-hour days if you want. What's the thing? How do you develop yourself on a personal level, and how do you keep the motivation now?
So it flip-flops. So when I was super impatient when I was young, now I can take things so slow and methodical. It's like I built the appreciation, but I couldn't lasso it when I was young, and now I can lasso it, and I have an appreciation for it. So I can just learn small segments over a long period of time. I'm not in a hurry to get to an end. I'm really in love with the development, and it's something so much different than when I was a kid, where I wanted to be 27 years old right now and have everything I needed to get in business right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. How about as we kind of wind this topic down, there are people watching that have kids, and they're trying to figure out how to invest in their kids, how to do the right thing. I tell new parents all the time. One of your employees just had a new baby. They posted on Facebook. John and Brittany, congratulations. And everything went well, but they're new parents, and you're never ready to be a parent. Like, baby comes out and you're like, oh, this is so cool, and then you're like, oh, I'm in over my head. Yeah. I mean, not just people like, oh, the sleepless nights and the food, but I'm responsible not just for keeping this child alive, but training them to be a productive citizen, good human, to do the things that are right, teaching them morals. I'm teaching them so much more than just get your homework done and stay out of my hair. But so many parents are in survival mode. Right, they're in this space where they're trying to figure out their job. They got finance stuff going on, their own health stuff going on. They got bills to pay. They got 97 things to do, and so often the kids are one of two things. Right, the kids become the all-encompassing world for them, and they just get to escape from the reality, and they pour all of themselves in there. We've seen the sports dads that play vicariously through their kids because they, don't like their own life, and so they dissociate from the life that they are responsible for, and they pour themselves in. We've all seen the moms that, their toddlers are their world, and, that toddler rules the roost, and the roles are reversed. And I'm like, no, you need to remember you're the parent, they're the child. They get to do what you say, not the other way around. And so you have people that are like, how do I even make an investment in my kid? How do I even pass anything down? And I wonder how much for my mom and dad, I'll have to ask my mom this, their investment was, I don't want to say by accident, but like you either do things by design or by default. And I feel like so many people are like, well, I got kids, so I got to figure this out. Yeah. And so we're just going in there and if you're a kid and you're watching this, like a lot of it's we're winging it. Like
the whole time.
We haven't been in these scenarios and situations.
But in all honesty though, like when you have a kid, at least you're starting at the beginning. Like with everything else, you're starting. It feels like at the middle of a storyline where you got history that now you you're and it's tough to start when you're in the middle of a story.
That's fair. I think so. I youth pastored for a lot of years, and I would get the kids at 12, 13, 14, and they would start coming into youth group. And I always enjoyed meeting the parents that were like, "Oh, our kid is amazing. They're so spiritual, and they, everything else." And I'm like, "Let me spend like 5 minutes with them, and I'll tell you how amazing and spiritual they are." Because I get it. Mom and dad want to either see the absolute best or absolute worst in their kids. Very few parents have an objective view of their kids, and oftentimes. That's why you have the person that shows up on American Idol. They'll be like, I can sing amazing. My mom's told me my whole life. And then they open their mouth and all of America's like, please, God, never sing again. Because someone lied to them. They weren't objective.
Right.
And I think as a parent, navigating those kind of spaces, it can be really challenging to mold and shape your child in an objective way. Because either we're too hard pushing them for success, or everything they do, they just fart golden nuggets, and we're just so excited that they're our kid. And there has to be a middle ground where we can love them and embrace their passions and celebrate what they do well, but also be able to tell them, you're terrible at this. Like we're going to fix this. Because otherwise they're going to grow up in a fantasy world. And I feel like so many of the kids I dealt with as a youth pastor, so many that I saw, in various events and throughout life are raised one of two ways. Either that nothing they can do is wrong, there's not an ounce of humility in them, everything's awesome, why would my boss ever correct me? Or they're just have been beat up and such huge weights have been placed on them, they either push mom and dad off and they run in the other direction. So how do we pass on so that our kids, Graham and Ryan, Charlotte and Ryan, will be sitting here one day doing a podcast of their own saying, our dads taught us. How can we do that? What kind of investment? How can we bring an objective place with them? How do you do that with Ryan?
Yeah, and it's, when you're authentic, I mean, kids know.
Yeah.
Like, and when you dig, and they'll put up with what you're saying, and then deep down they don't believe what you're saying, they're just going to take it so far and not really learn from it, right? So don't waste your time trying to pull one over. Yeah. You don't know something, you say you don't know something. And then when you say you do know something, it's believable. Because they're not going to believe that you know everything. And so we overshare with just about everything. And it allows us to then reciprocate, and he will overshare. And we have to make sure when he overshares, it's not something that's penalized, and he's not going to penalize
right.
when we overshare. And
creating those safe spaces that they come into,
but that adversity, when you create sort of authentic adversity, where this isn't like something I'm making up to make something inauthentically hard so that I punish you for it. I mean, if we're going to tackle something, this is the real thing about it. This is what makes it hard, and why you're a parent, you've got a partner, and I'll help fight it with you. And so if you tell me what it is, we're going to fight on the problem first. It's not going to be a lecture about how you shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah, I think the authenticity is a really good point. I also think, I often have said this about my mom. I didn't feel like there was nothing I couldn't not tell my mom. Like, I didn't feel like if I came in and told her, like, I did some horrible, like, she was going to love me. She may discipline me, but, like, I knew I could trust her to the nth degree. And so, like, I can remember times, and I've told this story from the pulpit. I don't know if I ever told it online, so here we go. But we were like freshmen in high school, and a couple of buddies of mine decided, well, we're in high school now, so we should get some beer. And we went over, got some beer. We went into a cemetery behind my buddy's house, and I don't know how many we drank or whatever, but it was enough that we were all, none of us had ever drank before. We threw up, the whole deal. It was horrible. Didn't sleep well, terrible. I come home the next day, and I come in, and I sit down with my mom and said, I got to tell you something. and I told her, I said, this is what happened. This is what we did. I don't want to get those guys in trouble. Like, their parents didn't know. Like, and she never said anything about it. We sat there. We had this conversation. I cried a little bit. She prayed for me. And I never drank like that ever again.
Wow.
And
okay.
But it was this trust that we had. So, like, it didn't matter, really what was going on in my life or world. Like, I knew that she had created this environment where I could share safely. She wasn't going to bring the hammer down and get grounded for forever. She was like, thank you so much, for sharing that. Now you understand. I was like, yeah, I totally know I was a doofus with this. And there was a maturity in that let me grow into certain things. Because I feel like some parents are so quick to just like bring the axe down on their kids. And it's like, well, no wonder you don't know what's going on in their life. Like, I wouldn't share anything either. Somebody stand there ready to hit me.
Well, and I broke the cycle. I'm the opposite of you, where there wasn't anything that I ever shared. I mean, there was probably a lie within a lie within a lie, just to escape, my childhood. And so, like, I broke the cycle. I said, I will never do that, Ryan. I hated every minute that I couldn't share anything with anybody who would react, reasonably.
Yeah. And so, I agree with you. I think creating that authenticity, that helps, and navigating that. My mom was really good at that side of things, and it's really helped me with my own kids to try and create that one-on-one time, because she would do that and we'd talk about whatever. And I think that side of things really opens up the communication lines and really can breed that healthy objective. Because I knew if she said something to me, she wasn't like pulling, she wasn't going to tell me I was good at something when I wasn't, right. And she wasn't going to blast me if I was terrible at something, but she, hey, you probably need to work on that. And she had her own way of doing those things.
Right.
So,
and you don't want to be overcritical and mean about it, where you don't want to devastate. So if your kid can't sing, but he really wants to, right? You need to say, let's get some lessons, or let's
exactly.
do this.
You're going to have to work twice as hard at this.
Exactly. Yep.
So I had this conversation with Benjamin yesterday. So Graham is naturally athletic. I never had to show him how to catch a ball, didn't have to show him how to swing it. Like, he picked up the bat, knew how to swing it. I've been throwing balls to him since he was 3 or 4 years old. He hits them all over the yard. Now, he'll hit for a little bit, and then he's like, I'm bored of this, and I'll go do something else. Benjamin, on the other hand, he's going to have to work twice as hard. He's not, like, he doesn't swing the bat naturally. He doesn't catch the ball naturally. Like, he's, like, got 2 left hands, like the whole deal. And but he wants that more than Graham does. And so what's really fascinating right now to watch, so yesterday we were throwing tennis balls to him, and he's hitting them. Graham's hitting them all over the place. Then Ben gets up there, and he is swinging this thing like it's an axe. I mean, he's coming down. I'm like, buddy, you got to swing through the strike zone. I mean, I'm getting behind him. I'm helping his hands. And Pastor Mike was there, and he was helping too. And throwing. I mean, homie's missing. And he finally hits when he gets real excited. And he grabs the bat a little wrong, whatever. But at the end of that, he goes, "Can I hit him again?" And I was like, "I'm gonna throw a whole nother bucket of balls. I'm gonna have to go pick these up." But I had this moment where I said, Benjamin, I know you, because he was getting frustrated, and I said, I know you look at Graham and you say, wow, he can hit the ball every which way, and you hit one out of the 30 I just threw you. You can be good at this, but you're going to have to work twice as hard. And I think having those honest conversations is going to, later in life, for him and I, when he's 8, when he's 12, to be able to say, hey, son, you're really good at that. He's going to know I'm not blowing smoke at him. And when I say, hey, you're going to have to work hard at this, the cool thing is Benjamin will outwork Graham the rest of his life. I love Graham to death, but Benjamin is like, when he wants something, he is in on it, and like a pit bull and a pork chop. And I love seeing that, like, that intensity in him. But each of the kids is a little different, and so navigating that as a parent to fan those passions as well as help them in an honest way can be super challenging. So
absolutely.
Well, before we go, I know you shared some naughty stories and stuff of Joe getting in trouble. Give us like your all-time favorite childhood memory. It can be funny, it can be, touching, whatever. But when you think back to your childhood, you're like, man, if I could relive that moment, I would. It was great.
I'm a weirdo in this, but this is the one that sticks to me. And I was up at Lake Erie, and I was super young. I was probably 6, 7 years old, and I was looking down over a cliff, right? And there's a cliff and probably maybe 50-foot drop into the water below. And I'm peering over, right? And I slip, and I start going forward.
See, I don't do heights.
Somebody who pulls me from behind and like saves. I've never had my life saved before, but it was the weirdest feeling to have someone like rescue you. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's weird, but it's amazing.
Yeah, I never got that close. I would be 15 feet back. When we were in Israel, my wife, would tiptoe on these like 1,800-foot like cliff face. I'm like, babe, what are you doing? I'm like, your life insurance is paid up if you want to dabble with your life like that. But I was like, I'm not going anywhere near the edge of that. You know, Pastor Jermel's hanging over, taking selfies and stuff like that. I'm like, no. There's no reason.
It's weird how that kind of stuff sticks with you, because I think about that like once a week.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I think for me, the things that I really think about, salt water. This does sound weird, but the smell of the beach. So growing up, there was a family kind of shore house that we went to on 12th Street in Ocean City, and I can remember going for weeks at a time with my pop-up, and I can remember going down, and we'd walk the beach early in the morning. I can remember finding all sorts of stuff washed up, and so like when I think of vacation and I think of childhood and like those fun summer times, I can remember spending time down the shore with my pop-up. I mean, my parents and stuff obviously were working and doing stuff like that, so they weren't there all the time, but yeah, just swimming in the ocean and eating mac and mangoes on the boardwalk and stuff like that. Cool. So that'd be a kind of a fun childhood memory. So you're getting ready to do some fun vacationing. Your cruise was canceled.
Road trip.
And you're going to road trip for 10 days. Yes. Real quick, tell everybody your kind of plan, where you're going, and don't tell them when you're going, because we don't want your house to get robbed.
Right. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah. But no, I mean, I look forward to breaking away. Like, it's very time where I know that I'm about to not be able to take it any longer and I need to get away. And that was what my cruise. So if the cruise gets canceled, I still got to have to break away. And I love history of this country, and there's some places, especially out west, that I have not been to. So we're going to jump in a motor home, and we're going to hit some spaces. We're going to start out west with Texas and kind of head back. We're probably going to end up in Philadelphia as our last, and then head back this way.
You'll have to let me know what day. Maybe I'll road trip out there.
Yes.
Tour the city. That's my favorite city. That's so cool. You're going to do all the history stuff in Philly, Independence Hall, Liberty Bell, everything. Beautiful. You're going to love it. You should do the Franklin Institute while you're there. You're being a science guy and stuff like that. Okay. Has a lot of his like kind of inventions and stuff in there, and just neat. It's hands-on. Ryan will love it because it's kind of like a bigger version of Oh Wow, in the sense it's a lot of sensory and touch stuff. An adult Oh Wow would probably be the better version of it. It's cool. That's fun. Awesome. Well, we loved spending this time with you guys. If there's a topic you want us to hit, we're going to be back here next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We hope you are having a great week. Get out and enjoy some sunshine here in the Youngstown area. If you're elsewhere, I don't know what your weather's like, but here it's beautiful, 75 and sunny. So I'm planning to get outside with the kids, maybe grill some food up. It's going to be good. Have a good day.